Hello, this is White Wolf on again here at Ways of the Wild Institute in Vermont, and had a little time. I was over in the old area where Ways of the Wild Institute used to be located, and decided to pop back in the woods here and see if some of the old camp setups and the old fire circle and stuff were still here from the original base camp, and also wander down to the river, which brings back a lot of memories when I think about it. I spent some amazing time down at this mountain river here in Vermont, and some really special places along this river. So I figured, well, I got the camera with me because I was filming some other things, so why don't you come along and we'll see if we can find the old base camp. So as you can see, we're in a field here that we're starting out in, and this field sits on top of a really deep canyon gorge where the river sits down. And it's interesting because it's a very similar layout to where Ways of the Wild Institute is located today. And so we're going to leave the field here, and we're going to hop down into the woods because I see the old trail is still here. And we're going to see what we can find. So, try not to make this too bumpy of a ride. Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, we're also about the same elevation as this original location for Ways of the Wild Institute. We're at about 1,600 feet right now in the Vermont mountains, and so really we're in the foothills of the Long Range. A lot of beech, maple. Up here we don't have the silver maple, but we do have the sugar maple and the red maple. And we also have the striped maple. And got a few birches up here. We've got primarily the gray birch and the paper birch, and we also have the yellow birch. If you're extremely lucky, you might come across a black birch from time to time, but that's pretty rare. As you can see, the land drops off pretty steeply here down to the river. And we've got a lot of balsam fir, a lot of spruces, hemlocks, white pines, red pines, tamaracks up in here. We've got ashes. Yeah, you can see the old trail here through the young beeches is still here. Got a lot of apples in here too. So, looks like some things are still here from years ago at the old base camp. You can see the layout for the old base camp. It sits here on this nice open knoll. And of course we got the beech trees right here. And there's the beautiful golden bark of the yellow birch. And in the distance there we see the old gnarled apple tree, some red maples. And we've got some hemlock trees here. This is a baby one. We've got some giants around here too. Right behind it we've got a nice sugar maple that goes up. A lot of great old granite rocks around here covered by moss left over from the Ice Age, where this entire area was covered in an ice sheet a mile deep. Right here you can see the this is a young one. They get much bigger, but the bark here of the black cherry, which we have a lot of, and then just past that you'll see that tree in the background with the real straight furrowed bark horizontally. That's a white ash over there. And typically on your bark of the maples, especially the red maples and the sugar maples, you'll notice here that this real young maple's got a bunch of white spots on it. Very typical for your red maples up here. Most of the young red maples and even the older red maples have a lot of the white speckles on. Sugar maples primarily do not have the white spot, but occasionally you'll find them. And of course, it's a type of lichen that likes to grow on the on that particular tree. Here you got a nice, really nice big beech tree. I mean, as far as beech trees go, it's still pretty young. But notice how the bark is all broken, buckled, and bubbled. Okay. We're looking at the big one in the back. Now, if you look at the young one in the front, see how smooth that is? That's the way the old ones are supposed to look. Just a lot bigger. But yeah, they're supposed to look very smooth and remain smooth throughout their lives. But this back one here has beech bark fungus, which is an invasive fungus from Europe that came in, unfortunately, to America and has been infecting large populations of the American beech, which is a sad thing to see. Once they get infected, they do die. But of course, with the suppression of wildfires, a lot of the invasive insects, funguses, and blights that come into this country are allowed to spread at a rapid rate and infect vast areas of the forest. Whereas long ago, when forest fires were allowed to hold their part and do their work in the environment, these things were not quite as much of an issue as they are today, because the fires would burn all that stuff out. So today you see a lot more of these infestations spreading. Now you can see an old shelter of mine, typical tripod shelter, and this was a very tall one that I had built many years ago. Boy, it might have been about 7 years ago, and you can see it's still standing. And this was a winter quality shelter. I did spend some nights in here during the winter. Let's see if we can get around to the door. And it sits right on top of the bluff here, or the slope that goes down to the river. You can see. And yeah, the old door, the old ridge pole, the stand pole right in the front, still intact. And you can see all the way at the end, there's an opening at the foothold. But if we look inside here, I don't see any light coming in through any of the ribs, which is pretty good for 7 years ago, standing in the Vermont winters. The outside still has integrity. Those ribs still have integrity. As a matter of fact, everything about this shelter still has integrity. I could fix this up and stay in it if I needed to and I wanted to. The stand pole in the front here I'd replace. Not a big deal. I'd get another one and just wedge it in there and take that one out. Fix up the foot down there that's fallen, and then I'd start taking a bunch of debris from the forest floor here, and I'd stack it all up on top of the outside of this shelter. Just leave everything that's on there, and just rebuild from the outside. Just put more and more on there. See the moss that's been growing on it. So if I scraped up another 2.5 feet of insulation and stuffed it on top of here, tore out all the insulation on the inside, on the floor, and put new insulation inside, I could make this a livable shelter. So that's after 7 years. Triangle shelter still standing with integrity, no holes. And if we swing around here slowly, I don't want to get you seasick. Here is my old wood lean-to. It's a combination. I used to stuff wood all the way in the back of it, and then I used to sit in the front of it for workspace. And even though that thing was just a lean-to, it is still standing. Of course, it would need a lot of insulation on top because there's a lot of holes in there. The insulation on the lean-to was not nearly as thick as the shelter. Didn't have to be. So yeah, a little bit of work. Well, those poles look like they're still holding good integrity. Stuff some more insulation on top of there and scrape out the debris laying there on the inside, and that lean-to would be perfectly good to use. And that's after 7 years standing there. Whoops, sorry about that. And my old fire. Now typically I bury all my fires. I dig a hole and bury them. But in my base camps, if rock is available, I'll dig a hole, and then I will take rock and surround the fire itself, because that gives me a heat shield. Also a place to set my coal burn containers for cooking, work with hot rocks, things like that. And so it's nice to have basically a rock table zone around your fire. But you can see that none of these rocks contain soot. All right, they're not scarred and blackened. Now, why is that? Most fire pits you see that have rocks surrounding them have a lot of soot. So why would this one not? You can see I had a nice flat rock low there, my access point. Well, the answer to that question is small fires. In a wilderness situation, you conserve resources, you conserve energy. And so, you only light as big a fire as you absolutely need. And if you're burning clean fires, they will not soot the rocks. Okay, so that's what remains of Ways of the Wild Institute's old base camp. And, you know, all in all, it's still standing. A little bit of work, and definitely be able to turn it into a perfectly livable and workable camp again. So when you're out here and when you're building in a wilderness situation, no matter where you are, you know, think integrity. Right? Take your time, build something quality, and it will last. This is Vermont. This is the northern Vermont mountains. Winters up here are brutal. They last a long time. Once the snows start falling, they don't melt. Brutal temperatures, winds, heavy, heavy snows that just sit, turn to ice. And so these, you can see it in the background there, you know, these structures I built 7 years ago have lasted. And they have not had they have not had maintenance in probably 6 years. And so that's pretty good. So we're going to continue here, continue walking, and going to head down toward the river. You can see here another beach, and this beach is all buckled up with that beech bark light. And there's another one. Boy, all the beaches in here. Almost all the beaches are infected in this whole area. You know, when I was here 6-7 years ago, these beaches were clean. So you can see it moves in, and it does its work quickly. This stuff is not stuff to mess around with. Once it gets into the forests, once it takes its footing, its hold, and whatever species it likes to feed on, there's not much you can do about it. Fire has always held a place in the wilderness. But because most people throughout the ages have been afraid of fire because they have not understood fire, they've quelched it. And by doing so, they've allowed massive amounts of infectious things to populate our forests. It's too bad. All right, well, let's keep wandering down, and we'll head down to a really special place. When I first got here, I fell in love with it. I came here all the time. It's a very, very powerful medicine place, and I think you'll see why once we get there. Pretty soft, steep hill here, so take it easy so it doesn't buckle the camera around too much. Now, this is the area, and I'll show you here in a few minutes what gives this area its power beyond the hemlocks that are standing here in this grove. I'm not going to give you the name of this brook or this area because this is owned by somebody else now, and I don't want to spread the location all over the place because it is very tempting. And it's quite remote, so it's pretty easy to get back to without disturbing anybody. Not to mention, I used to live here, and I know the ins and outs of this place quite well. Over there on that ledge still stands a medicine circle I built years ago. What gives this place its power, its energy, sits down in that rock cut. Well, let's go down there and take a look. you saw the canyon, the falls themselves from below. I call them Hemlock Falls. This is from the top looking down, obviously. Okay, well, hope you enjoyed our little wander through the old Ways of the Wild Institute lands. And like I said, I was just over here, thought I'd pop in, brought the camera with me, thought maybe you'd like to see a little bit of the old footage of the place. Back then I didn't really have a video camera, so it's just a lot of photographs. It was also on my old website and a lot of them didn't transfer over. So anyway, hope you enjoyed our little wander, and I'm gonna leave that sit with you. I'm gonna pack up here and I'm gonna get on going. Alright, thanks again for your support, watching, for your interest in the ways of wild, the ways of self-healing, everything else that we teach here at Ways of the Wild Institute in Vermont. Be well and happy.